You're muted.
And greetings, everyone. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Coming at you tonight with some discharge, debt-free, some bankruptcy information, a primer for a video that, or a couple videos we're going to go over tomorrow from Paths to Freedom. And it's in the title there, PATHS to Freedom, FRDM, on YouTube. And I will put a link to those videos in the details section tomorrow night when we do the reviews. Nubs was telling me, he's here with me as well as 5-Speed Russ. And Nubs was telling me before the in the chat there that he's familiar with her, and he's got some paperwork he's going to be working on, as well as if you haven't been watching videos lately, that's something I'm moving on as well. I just spoke to Secretary of State today, as well as local Viridian Credit Union, in order to establish the trust account for both myself and my companion, and start moving forward with discharging these debts as appropriately through the different venues. And so as these videos, as I continue in these videos, I'll be giving firsthand experience of what I've been doing and how it's done. Today I wrote up a simple certification of trust for the Keith Orland Little FBU, pursuant to Iowa Trust Code 633A.4604. This certificate of trust is signed by all the currently acting trustees of the Keith Orland Little FBU Trust, who declare as follows: the grantors are Keith Little. The trust is revocable by the grantors, acting jointly and not separately. The trustees of the trust are Keith Little. Title to the assets held in the trust shall be titled as trust assets, and any amendments thereto. And what I mean by that, when I say the property shall be titled trust assets, is that every time you get something, it's titled trust asset. It's named by enumeration, so that it goes to the trust asset as property first of the trust, and then in that trust where it's identified by number. I hope you see the similarity. It's a name and a number.
All gotta be identified.
Yep, and just like in the U.S. code, the individual's name and number identify the record. So the name and number will identify the record, but you won't have a location of the property. It's held in abeyance, and any alternative description shall be effective to title assets in the name of the trust, or to designate the trust as a beneficiary. If the description includes the name of at least one initial or successor trustee, any reference indicating that property is being held in a fiduciary capacity, and the date of the trust. Excerpts from the trust agreement that establish the trust, designate the trustee, and set forth the powers of the trustee will be provided upon request. So it remains private up until request, and then it's done as a private request, and therefore stays out of the public. That's how trusts work. The powers of the trustees include the power to acquire, sell, assign, convey, pledge, encumber, lease, borrow, manage, and deal with real property or real and personal property interests, and all, which includes all real and personal effects. That's like that plenary and plenipotentiary powers we were talking about yesterday, having full power. The terms of the trust agreement provide that a third party may rely upon this certificate of trust as evidence of its existence of the trust, and is specifically relieved of any obligation to inquire into the terms of this agreement or the authority of my trustee, or to see the application that my trustee makes of funds or other property received by the trustee. So what we have,
Hey, Wizard.
real quick, what we have here is a notice that they're being relieved of any liability of guardianship or conservatorship, because that's not their role. Go ahead.
You said my as opposed to the. Is there a reasoning behind that?
Right, because it's my trustee. I am
Okay,
the
I see what
trust.
you're saying.
I am the trustor. You have a grantor and a grantee. The grantor is the real natural person. The
Right.
trustee is a fictional individual person.
It makes perfect sense now.
It's the corporate entity. Same with a trustor and trustee. Same with a benefactor and beneficiary. If it ends in E, it's a matter of the E state. It's fictional. If it ends with OR, it's the real, living, live, concrete noun. 7, the trust has not been revoked, modified, or amended in any way that would cause the representations in this certification of trust to be incorrect. And then a place to sign, and then, of course, your jurat. It's real simple to draw one up. And you can draw a certificate of trust even without having an actual board of trustees or anything like that is incorporated. So it's important to let them know it's an unincorporated entity establishing a trust.
Yes, make sure you stay in honor. That's one thing that I am looking at very interestingly, because like growing up, I always thought that the government and the law was bad. And looking into some of this, I realized that they are not necessarily bad nor good. They're there to make purpose of something. And it's the individuals that are undereducated about their positions that cause problems. At least that's how I see it.
I would agree.
Damn, Wizard, pass that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the metaphor I'll use is my own self. As a rotten little kid running the streets and causing hell, I'm the United States citizen. However, if you notice, everything I've pointed out in these codes and everything, everybody's just adopting things. So here you have this guy that's running around and he ain't got no mama or daddy. So somebody adopts him to correct him. That's basically what we're doing. We're adopting the record that is in error so we can correct it. We're going to be the true daddy because we're the true daddy in effect. That United States citizen would not exist if it weren't for something supplemental, the American that was born. So we're going to go over some things, and the first thing I've got tonight is a short video presentation that I pulled off of TikTok. Somebody sent it to me, and I don't know what you guys think about these people, or if you even know them, but we're going to get past the messenger thing and listen to the message and what these people, I'm not going to agree totally with the message that they state, but at the same time, I want to make sure that you understand. I want to make sure that you understand that most of what they say is correct, and I'll interject when I figure something out that I do not agree with, and things and believe that something could be stated more accurately. So, StreamYard link is down there for anybody else that wants to join the panel. It would be great to have some more people up. I do have the StreamYard updated again, so I have enough room for 9 people plus myself. So feel free to hit that link and come on up and ask any question you want. I'll be glad to answer it. And it's not just going to be my opinion. It'll be through research. We can research anything you want right here on panel. So let's take a look at this. And please pay attention to what he's saying. And we're also going to see Karen Hughes on here. Now, Karen Hughes hasn't made a video in a couple of years almost. but she used to be deeply involved in the banking and securities brokering. And so what she's going to say is going to be valid as well, except again, there's going to be a couple things that I might rebut on her. Just as a matter of perception of how that United States citizenship and stuff works. So before I get going, I want to thank everybody for all of your support. I really appreciate it in all venues, no matter how much you support me, where or whatever. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal link down below for anybody that would like to share some love. Hopefully, I'll be able to get rid of that PayPal button here real soon. Because like I said, once you move into this venue and realize that you're a creditor, you don't necessarily have to depend on those donations and everything if you're the creditor. So it's a matter of, I'm not going to be monetizing the channel. I never will. I'll not do that route. I understand the concept that we are the true creditors, and that is the solution to get back to being the true creditors. And we're going to go over that supplemental thing that I was talking about earlier, something a little bit auxiliary, something a little ancillary as it relates to discharge and bankruptcy. Because that's truly what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the United States that is bankrupt, and they can't collect assets until they pay off their debts. This is why the states are not operating in the interest of the United States and collecting assets through the state, because the United States can't have them. So they use those assets to establish a set value that they can then deposit in a general account, which the federal government then matches. That's how they're robbing both the people through their private assets, and then converting that asset into a value to deposit into their fund, their accounting, by selling off that asset to somebody else. They don't want the asset and they can't have it, even though they have ownership in the state. They have no title to anything, none. So let's pay attention to this.
They sell that asset millions of times too. There's no, unless it's defined in the paperwork, there's no telling how many times your signature gets sold in these contracts.
Right. It just keeps going until you make that claim, and then once somebody tries to buy that debt, they have to make sure it's a valid debt. This is the situation we're going on with my companion. They came in and took $3,800 and didn't validate the debt. You can't validate the debt unless you're talking to the debtor, and there was no communication with us. So they gave a default judgment, and then executed a default judgment, which they have no authority to do. You have to have a final judgment before you can go executing that final judgment. So without a final judgment, they're not supposed to be executing anything. It still sits under a presumption. That's why they're required to have a final judgment that settles the matters.
A revocation letter is a very important thing in that
Yeah, revoking the powers of attorney that are assumed. There are no powers of attorney. So it's not a matter of revocation. It's a matter of correcting, like I said, adopting that record. Because you're the American, you have the right to adopt it. It was created by you or for you, and without you, it wouldn't exist. So you are the full credit of that being or of that thing.
Special operations. I was a psychological operations specialist from 1999 to 2012.
Psychological specialist. Okay, dealing with the psychology. So this guy's words are going to be fairly accurate, I'm going to say. But again, he's going to go into things here that I'm going to rebut because they're on the record. King Charles III is not the general postmaster. He is the grantor. He is what would be presumed the grantor, the head of the parliamentary houses, the International Parliamentary Union. The postal union is supposed to be administered through the Queen, but we currently have no Queen, or there is currently no Queen. I'm not retract that. It's not my Queen. My Queen, in any sense, would be Mother Earth.
And I'm also a son of the American Revolution. Now, everyone is wondering about this Russell
You turn it up.
David Wynn Miller story, and everybody wants to know what in the world is going on with that. what does it mean?
As high as it goes.
But to understand what it means, you have to understand what's going on planet Earth that you all need to be made aware of so you can understand what it is these guys are talking about, okay? So I'm going to go back to the beginning. This is a very old Masonic system that's operating here on planet Earth, and it is all based upon shipping and postal wars that have morphed into banking wars. Okay, so
Absolutely. You started out with a naval fleet before there was any kind of postal system, and that's what they used for wars. And then when they established the postal union or postal setup, whatever it was, that was an extension of the Marine Corps of the Navy. And like I said, it's the military that runs these corporate operations, these commercial operations. And so they're the ones that operate the banking system as well. So now we've got a naval war that turned into a postal war that we now have in modern times as a banking war. And they're all related. Listen to how he says this is structured.
So the three really work together hand in hand, but the banking warfare has really kicked off here as of late in relation to this whole thing. So when you're born here on this planet, or here on this planet, you are born of the water, right? Because this is a shipping war. You're all captured in a shipping warfare that you're unaware of, that you've been captured into. So when you're born of your mother's water, and you are docked as a vessel by a doctor who is a registered harbor master by the port authorities and authorized by the Department of Transportation. And when you are docked by the doctor, you are then harbored in the harbor in a vessel in dry dock known as a hospital, which is considered to be a boat parked on the land. Okay. But when you're born and harbored by the harbor master in this vessel in dry dock, you are considered a ward of the state. So you are placed into a maternity ward. Why are you a ward of the state? Because you have not yet been brought under the laws of this old school Masonic system. Now, how they get you into this old school Masonic system is with the birth certificate. So you're considered a...
Yeah, we're going to mention that too, Disciple. It's going to talk about a military post in here. Because if you're not part of the military, you still have to operate through a military post. And like I said, folks, the post offices are inland marine installations. They are staffed by mariners. They have to have special mariner licenses and insurance. That is then converted to inland marine insurances. That's your Social Security. And then that they have you have an ID system, whether it be an ID or a driver's license, that then turns around and says you're required to carry further insurances. And like I said, if you look at the 2022 Postal Service Reform Act, you'll see that it has 90% of the material is all about insurances, Medicare and Medicaid.
Ward of the state or an outlaw, because you're not yet under the laws of the old Masonic system until your mother signs the birth certificate. This is a commercial instrument, okay? This is saying that you are now owned and under the laws of this Masonic system, but you are owned and that you are nothing more than a piece of cargo.
You're muted.
Okay, like I said before, there is documentation out there that says there's a United States citizen. That is what is owned, and it's owned by the United States or the state, actually. Both. It's co-ownership. Okay? So the thing that is owned is a United States citizen, and like I said before, that's just the paperwork. The individual's name and number identify the record. And so when he says that you are owned, that is totally in error. I will rebut that to the end of the earth. What is owned is the thing, and that's what the states operate on, is in rem, the thing. Now, the federal courts operate on in rem, and that is the person. So the state operates on the property, the thing, and the United States operates on the name. Okay, and that property, like I said, in my trust is enumerated. and everything is named trust property. So here we have the same situation where the state enumerates, and it's the United States that names everything United States citizen. Okay? And again, I'm sorry that this is low. Let me drop a link to it before we get going too far. Everybody can pop this in your search engine and pull this up and listen to yourself. Turn that volume up as high as you can get it. And again, my apologies for the low volume here. TikTok seems to do that.
Cargo or a vessel or a dead person that's presumed to be missing, dead, or lost at sea, right? Once you're legged into this massive corporate construct, and it's a global construct, you are then subject to the laws of the state. State of affairs, not state of California or state of Nevada.
State of affairs. Okay, this is what's being confused with your performance in public, performing the functions of public office. Because when you act in the same way, it looks like you're committing to the same affairs. It's not. Maybe we'll look up that term affairs and see what the difference is.
We're talking global state of affairs. You're legged into the state.
It's in favor of the banks. It's certainly not in favor of the people. What happens when you have a child is your child is given a social security number. They estimate how many taxes your child is going to pay over his or her lifetime. And they take that birth certificate and they issue it on the capital markets and they earn money on it.
Once that happens, you are then under the laws of this entire global construct.
I'm saying something much worse, actually. What I'm saying is that when every citizen goes into the court system, they are not seen there as themselves a U.S. citizen. They're
Okay, yeah, and you yourself are not a U.S. citizen, so of course you're not going to be seen as a U.S. citizen. But at the same time, no, you're not going to be seen as yourself. You're going to be seen on the paperwork as that U.S. citizen. And I'm telling you again, that is not you. That is not yourself. That is a creation between the United States and the states to enumerate a record with a name on it so they can keep track of you. It's a tracking device. Remember that device? Okay, it's a tracking device that the state uses to obtain money, property, labor, or services on credit. And they're obtaining it on your credit, which is not credit, because that's the only way they can obtain it is if you don't have credit and don't know that you're a creditor. That's all you got to fix. Know thyself. Know who you truly are in comparison to what that document says.
seen as
They-
the person.
They see us
who
as
had their
minors.
birth certificate.
Again, they don't see you as the minor.
Or yeah, they see the contract as minor.
Right, exactly. And so that's what we've got to help them see. Listen, I understand that you see that paperwork there that says it's a minor contract, but you'll see that name on there. That wouldn't exist if it wasn't for me. You think you're the principal? You think you're the trustee? I guarantee you, you're not the principal. Who's the principal, guys?
We
Anybody? Exactly. The principle of the thing must come first before anything subsequent can come after. You came first. Frank means first. You have the first right to have your yay be your yay and your nay be your nay, which is a value system. You have the first right to put your value on things. That's what the franking is all about on those envelopes and mailings and all that. You have the right to be noted as first in line, first in time. The beneficiary is deemed to be the true owner, period.
I was thinking about that first in line, first in time. If you think about it, isn't the stamp, which would be the tax to the queen, isn't the stamp always placed upon the letter, meaning first in line because it's raised above?
Check out the definition of affair. down in the chat.
Yeah, that's I already pulled it up. If you continue on reading, it says to set or put. You know, in investing, they have what's known as a put call, and that's what they're doing. They're saying it's their affair. They're putting in a put call. Really? So, and we've gone over that before. There's many other etymologies that lead to the same thing. To set. Where do you think as set comes from? What do you think ordinary is? Ordinary business. Well, that to me always, anytime I see ordination or ordinary or ordinance, I automatically go straight to Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the belly. First things first. Before thou was cast from the womb, I sanctified thee and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. So when you were received as a gift from God unto the nation, it was supposed to have been taken as a credit. And in equal exchange, they gave you a nationality of United States citizenship.
But that's not a nationality that you want.
Well, it is if you understand how it works. Let me clue you in. United States is the only one in the world that doesn't actually have a nationality. Now, let me ask you, the people that subject themselves to that nationality in all these other countries, is that a violation of Jeremiah 1:5 or a dissolution or a submission to or a subjection to something lesser than what you are already sanctified and ordained as? They're going to commit themselves repeatedly because they've got a national system that says they were born in that nation. United States, there's no birth registration. So yeah, you can claim the birth registration in the state as a nation state, but then you're still subjecting yourself to something that's not a nation. It's a republic. Oops.
Guess it's clear to see who the strangers are.
Exactly. They're the ones that are fleeing from all these other nations, knowing that those nations aren't being ruled by anything but corruption. Why would a child of God want to be in that situation? I think a lot of people misunderstand what America really is in its foundation, and again, I can't but feel bad about the history that those people of those nations came over here and wiped out the indigenous people. I wonder if not, those people might be more of the children of God than anybody else on this earth at this point in time. And that's just, thoughts.
Keep in mind, they only wipe them out in name and title.
Right.
But they hold trusts for them because they're not gone. We just don't know who they are.
Exactly.
Certificate pledge. You're there as a debtor. You're not there as a citizen. We have been
No, they look at you as that citizen, like I said before, through the paperwork, and that citizen is the debtor until that record is reconciled. Otherwise, the only thing that happens on that record is that they just keep adding debt. There's already a credit side, but it's not being balanced. So all they do is add debt to it, and nobody balances it, saying, "Oh, well, there's credit here for it." So discharge it through the credit side.
converted from human beings that are citizens of the Republic of the United States into chattel. Chattel that is a legal.
And no, they didn't turn the people of the United States or American soil into chattel. Again, that's an impossibility. You cannot turn a person, a living being, into a piece of paper. The chattel is the paperwork, okay? That's the distinction. They made paperwork based on your coming into this world. Based on you being born, they created a set of documentation to keep track. It's a tracking device for the banks through a posting system for all things shipped, transferred.
Term for something which is property. We are now considered to be property of the Federal Reserve. We're not considered.
And again, that's false. The record is considered to be property. It is not your property, and you're not supposed to be holding it. You're only supposed to have use of it. And the Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. That's for all borders, including the intangible ones, of entering information, supplemental information into a record to correct it. It doesn't just mean the physical borders. If you want to look at the borders, it's the firmament and the earth. There's a border there, separating the earth from the heavens. And if we are truly the spiritual beings that have descended from heaven, we cross that border. He preserved that going out of heaven and entering into this world. We are not of this world. We live in this world. So we were already granted the going out of and coming into heaven, into earth. As above, so below. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We were citizens in heaven. He preserved our going out in our descension into earth so we could do his will and make earth heaven. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what our imagination is for. It's not for revenge and stuff and destroying. It's for making earth our own heaven while we're here.
To be human beings and citizens of the United States.
These are the pillars of the laws of this global construct: admiralty and maritime, and civil jurisdiction.
And that civil jurisdiction is the maritime contracts of officers. Okay, that's that 14th Amendment. It didn't free the slaves. What it did was it psychologically enslaved every one of us. I don't care if you're an immigrant. I don't care if you were born here. I don't care if you still think you're a slave or if you think your past descendants or ancestors were slaves and now somehow you're owed reparations. I don't give a fuck. The principal thing is you are not an officer of the United States. You're not supposed to be in those civil venues. They are not your affairs. As benefactors, you're not supposed to be contracting with them because that is what's causing the confusion. You're supposed to be sticking with private contracts and not entering into the public contracting venue and signing those documents without giving a supportive supplemental handwritten statement to make sure that it's not entered in error as an officer by benefactor, not a public servant, not qualified to place a liability on the public record.
Law of the sea, law of the land. Law of the sea has always been held by the King of Great Britain. Okay, that's how he runs his entire country. It's considered a vessel, a great big boat.
That part I'll agree with. That's like a command center for the law of the sea, and this is why they had the Boston Tea Party, because they kept having to go all the way over to England, Great Britain, to pay their taxes. And the only way they could pay their taxes is by taking the cargo over there and having it weighed. That was their weight and measure system for taxation. Quantity and weight. Bushels and barrels and weight and yeah, and so that's where the postal scale was with the king, with the houses, the royal houses. It still exists the same way today, except now they have post offices that do that for everything shipped because of the Tea Party. Created a different solution to extend that jurisdiction, the postal jurisdiction, around the world.
people.
And again, all those post offices are an extension of the Royal Navy.
In that boat are considered to be missing, dead, or presumed lost at sea with their birth certificate system. That's how he runs his whole country. And that's the same thing we're doing here in the United States. Why? Because Great Britain has always been our Postmaster General here in the colonies and the 50 states. Now let me explain what.
False. False. May have started out that way, but when they created the Universal Postal Union, they have what's called a Director General of the International Bureau. He is the actual Postmaster General, and you'd be surprised to find out he's Japanese.
Postmaster General of the world is. Okay, this is our vessel. This is.
And again, I'll state, anybody that can rebut that, please do so. But as far as I know, it's the Director General of the International Bureau. And it's all for the statistics, so they can keep track of the statistical elements. This is a logistics center. It's for shipping. That's all they're doing, is they're keeping track. It's an accounting. All things posted to the accounts.
This planet Earth. This is the vessel that we're all floating around on in this sea of space we call the solar system or the galaxy. This is our outpost, right? Our boat. The Postmaster General, or the General of the Post, is Great Britain. Always has been. This is an old school Masonic warfare platform, planetary warfare platform based upon shipping, postal, and banking wars. Okay, I've explained the shipping to you. The postal revolves around timelines. When you're brought into a jail, the timelines kick off, whether it's a federal offense, state offense, or local offense. Different venues have different timelines, okay, and there's several. His whole system is enforced in the courts around the world. This whole system is enforced in the courts, and what they're enforcing is the elemental chart, his strategic metals contract, his styles manual, and the dictionary, which is basically the entire system all of us are using, the grammatical construct we all use. All of these contracts, different venues have different timelines, okay, and there's several. His whole system is enforced in the courts around the world. This whole system is enforced in the courts, and what they're enforcing is the elemental chart, his strategic metals contract, his styles manual, and the dictionary, which is basically
Elemental chart, minerals contract. Like I said before, in order for urban development to acquire land, they must first condemn it so that they can then use it for commercial purposes. Who the fuck is anyone to condemn land of its natural use that does not belong to them?
basically the entire system all of us are using.
That's what the contracts and courts are all about. Again, I reiterate, those conservation easements that are held by the post office, and they are the ones that are claiming the condemnation of the land for commercial uses.
Wouldn't that be considered securities fraud?
Well, if you could prove it, yeah. But it's going to be a hard day in hell trying to prove that. You already know you have a hard time with a damn traffic ticket. And then what are you going to do if you do? You're going to hang them all? You have to have some way of being able to put people that are dependent into a situation where they can live. That means you have to have land for them because they can't steward the land themselves. But that doesn't mean that you condemn land for its natural use for commercial purposes. A better way to do that is, of course, you have your commercial properties, But anything beyond that is not a condemnation, but a quality of life thing where you can set up that same conservation easement, but use those commercial laws as a protection for those that are dependent. And they're not doing that. It's like I say, when you give to these charities and stuff, and all these civil programs in your communities that have federal funding or state funding, that funding doesn't really go to the community and its actual needs. It goes to support commercially the income of those people that are supposedly providing such necessary services. Remember the video the other day of the 70 New York Housing Authority people that were taking bribes? Evidently, the federal government doesn't pay them well enough to begin with. And they're all doing it for purposes of condemnation, or for commercial purposes, where they have to condemn the land of its natural use, supposedly for what? HUD, which is housing and urban development. And that housing and urban development is for people that are dependent upon the government for low income housing. But yet you have to sit on a waiting list for 8 years or some shit. Come on. Where the fuck is all the money coming from?
They're under the ag department, if I remember correctly.
Well, yeah, the Department of Agriculture. Remember, folks, all credit sources come from the Farm Agricultural Credit. Farm and Agricultural Credit System. Everything is dependent upon the gross domestic product. Taxes, insurance, everything.
And the universities pretty much have control of pretty much all of that.
Land grants. They're
Yep,
known as
in the
land
communities.
grant colleges. Land grant colleges, folks. Look them up.
You also have land grant. There's land banks or something too, right? Or something.
Well, yeah, land banks, land grant
Yeah.
colleges.
And the grammatical construct we all use. All of these contracts and this entire system is enforced in the courts around the world. Those are called the neutral ports. That's where the wars are fought in relation to this entire matter, right? If you got a grievance.
Now, when he says neutral ports, I want to remind everybody of the Judicial Officer Department, which is a neutral and independent forum within the United States Postal Service. Okay? All of these offices are supposed to be neutral. Okay? If that's neutral, that would be a safe harbor. Safe harbor. Now, pay attention to what's said about that hospital. See, a hospital is supposed to be a safe harbor, a neutral port.
You go into the courts or the neutral ports and you fight it out. But this thing is set up to make sure that he always wins. Okay? This entire system is set up so that you never win. All they look at you as is a piece of cargo, a boat or a vessel that can be harvested, raped, plundered, and pillaged for its goods. So this is the old school Masonic system that these guys have set up, and this is what is being defended on planet Earth, okay? This whole system belongs to the King of Great Britain, or is run and defended by the King of Great Britain, okay?
Which is Charles III now, just so you know. No queen. The queen died. Charles III became king, and he has no wife.
So he is the Postmaster General of the world. All the countries on planet Earth are utilizing and playing with this system, okay? Doesn't matter if you're in Russia, China, or Germany. If you get married here in the United States, you're still considered to be married in Russia, China, or Germany. If you get
And just so you have something to think about, and my reasoning behind the Postmaster General thing, the King of Britain is not the Postmaster General, because if that's the case, then all those years that the Queen reigned, the world went around without a Postmaster General, because the Queen can't be a Postmaster in the Royal Navy. Don't you get it? And again, that's all military once again.
divorced, you're considered divorced all over the world, right? Because the courts are all connected. Everybody's playing this game. It's a big old school Masonic system that they utilize to control the people and run the planet with. This is the old school monarchical system that commands and controls the entire planet, or at least is attempting to. All of the countries on planet Earth are utilizing this Masonic warfare platform, okay? And as they are all high-ranking Masons, all of them, okay? Not Masons in the form of guys who are setting up sidewalks and
You muted?
Hey, Fuzzy. I'm so good at this, ain't I, guys? I just dropped a link for everybody to this TikTok because I do know the volume is kind of low. I've got it up as high as I can get it. So there's a link so you can put it in your search engine and use your technique to get the volume as high as you need to so you can listen to it again and hear it. It's a good set of information, but again, make sure you learn to discern that you are not the paperwork, and that is not what they're doing. They are not treating you as the U.S. citizen. It may seem that way, but again, it's all an illusion, a trick, a play. It's all magicians and this and that. And again, it goes down to that grammar. He spoke about that fourth item. The grammar itself is a contract. This is why I keep getting on everybody about learning those terms and conditions. That's what makes the contract. And then it's got to be in a civil unit, and it's all about the mineral rights and the elements. You are the fifth element, if you don't remember that movie.
driveways, okay? They're not those type of Masons. These Masons build governments. They build them and they defend them. The contracts that I pointed out that the King of Great Britain has, all the countries have those same contracts. They all have their own strategic metals contract in place that allows them to print and mint their own coinage based upon their banking system, okay? Everybody has commodities that they trade around the world with each other, and that's what those banking systems are based upon. Oil being one of the biggest. And the King of Great Britain is the reigning monarch on the planet. That's why he...
Okay, he's the reigning monarch. Now, the monarch would have a navy, and that navy would have an admiral, and that admiral would be the one that assigns the captains to the vessels. Okay? So the United States has a vessel, the state is the admiral, and they enumerate the name, the legal name. They translate a given and family name and assign that as the captain of a United States vessel, known as a state resident. That is made upon enumeration at birth. That determination is made by the people of the state, the Secretary of State, the registrar at the local county, and the birth clerk at the hospital. Now, these people are making a predetermination of a classification. And you've heard me speak about this before. There's a variance for categorical predetermination standards that are fundamentally different in nature. And the fundamental different in nature is that there's a time span that must pass before you can be qualified as a resident. This is clear and distinct in the language, because in order to be a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent, you must be of age of majority in order to contract under the correct grammar. If those qualifications aren't met first, that classification cannot be made yet. That's the problem. It's being made upon enumeration at birth that you are, in fact, a resident. That's a presumption, and all you have to do is break that presumption by letting them know the difference. No, that is the record. The individual's name and number identify the record that was created only as an extension to my credence. And I am a child of God. All glory goes to him. Now, where do you think credit comes from, folks?
He is the Postmaster General of the world. What we're going to look at is where the crown derives its authorizations or its authorities that their entire system is based upon. Okay, real quick, let's go back and recover some American history, okay? Back when the colonies were founded, there was 13 colonies originally. And before the American Revolution broke out, our post office was the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania post office, the Benjamin Franklin post office, okay, or postal court, which is here. And once the American Revolution had broke out, the king had cut off our ability to conduct international trade and commerce out of that post office because we went to war against Great Britain.
Interesting, huh? So what do you think, guys?
You know me, I think the stuff's real interesting.
I find it, you're muted. I find it very interesting and goes along very much so with what I've been learning and why I've been disappeared for so long. I'm like an apparition these days.
Well, in case you hadn't noticed, these people are saying pretty much the same thing I've been saying all along. Like I said, I had a couple things to rebut. You are not the paperwork. That's the first distinction that we really got to say is, hey, listen, I understand that there was certain documentation created. You know, it was an investment as far as I know. And under further investigation, you will find that it was only entered due to myself. Due to myself. In other words, I put things out errantly, of course, but in that, even the things that I put out, I should have got something back. So what happened, like I've said before, is they've got a system where if you sign a certain way without qualifying it, then the presumption is that you are an officer and that you've already contracted that all property belongs in the state and that you're just transferring it. That's simple. You've given up all rights, titles, and interest to property, and therefore you're only holding it until somebody else comes along to acquire it. That's as simple as I can put it. So let's take a look at the next thing I wanted to point out. And this is from uscourts.gov. And it goes to that discharge. And again, I'll point out that PATHS2FRDM has some couple of videos that we're going to be reviewing tomorrow in the next few days. As regards to discharge that shit, because that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to discharge it. And in discharging it, we're going to go over different definitions of what discharge means in the different venues. Because as we just heard on TikTok, the guy is absolutely right. There's multiple venues that they operate in, and each venue has its own grammar. So we're going to go over a little bit of that and show you. Here it is, discharge in bankruptcy. Bankruptcy basics. Bankruptcy basics. Now here they're going to tell you some basics, but they're going to leave something very important out. It's something supplemental, auxiliary, ancillary. And those are terms you should be getting used to. Supplemental. See, what they have is a presumption of the facts, but there's supplemental facts that can be added to it that will either prove it true and solidify it for, like, say, a final judgment, or rebut it so that it has the integrity of the record having to be upheld, it has to be corrected or rectified. Corrected, rectified. Discharge in bankruptcy, bankruptcy basics. The bankruptcy discharge varies depending on the type of case a debtor files. So we've already spoken about the multiple different jurisdictions that we're going to talk about, venues, the different grammar styles that we're going to see of discharge. And now we see that we have type of case a debtor files. So now we have more different delineations of those different venues, chapter 7, 11, 12, or 13. But supplementally to that, we're going to go over next what is called chapter 15, ancillary and other cross-border cases. As above, so below. Every border. God has preserved your going out, coming in from this time forth, and even forevermore. So that ancillary border, ancillary or cross-border case is the very case I'm talking about. Nobody's paying attention to the American, of which all of that credit is extended from the beginning, in first in time, first in line. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. So if you know me, you know my Father. So if you know that I'm the creditor, then you know my Father is where that credence comes from. And the merits of my actions will show it. Merits being the spiritual credit. The only way I can do that is make sure that all glory goes to God. It's a difference. It's a separation of the spiritual from the manual. That as a manual being, I am a spiritual being. You know me by the name Keith, of which there's another attachment, something auxiliary, supplemental, ancillary, cross-border, and is merely just a family name. And you've taken the two and created a name known as a legal name that consists of two things, one known as a first name and one known as a last name. Very distinctly different from one given name and the family name, and therefore the grammar says there's a different venue. Does everybody understand that? The language itself tells you the venue. Learn the languages. Go ahead.
I get it. I mean, I started looking at the words a long time ago, and
Isaiah 54, verse 17.
Hey, I'm going to jump down. I'll catch you guys later. If you're still up, I'll stop back up.
All right, we'll be here.
Peace, brother.
Greatly appreciate it.
So when it comes to the scriptures, again, I love my scripture, folks, and I hope you catch on. It's plain writing. It's very easy to understand. And sometimes when you learn how to read it so well that you can start reading in between the lines and reading what's not there, you'll get really good at it. And that comprehension just starts flowing in. And this one here says, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. And every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment, thou shalt condemn. If you can't rise up and condemn that word because you don't know that word, then you're going to fail. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. And then we follow up with 2 Timothy, 2:15, and it tells you, study to shew thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed. That's where you rise up against them in their judgment and condemn it, because you're not ashamed, because you're rightly dividing the word of truth. That is an American, or that is the United States citizen, and it consequently actually belongs to the proper superior holder in due course, and that would be the principal creditor, of which all credit is extended through from the very credence of that which I come from. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. So we finalize it with Titus 3:8. This is a faithful saying, and these things I will that thou affirm constantly, that they which have believed in God might be careful to maintain good works. These things are good and profitable unto men. Very simple, folks. The scriptures are a set of instructions that guide you. In them they mention Jesus, but nowhere do I think it says that Jesus is God, nor do I think that Jesus is the only way. Because before Jesus, there was always God, and God has always been the way, the light, the life, the love, even in Jesus, even if Jesus was God. I find these scriptures very telling and very taunting, because I think if you learn these scriptures and their simplicity, people catch on much easier, because it's a simple grammar, not a contractual grammar, but a belief. And they're the ones that believe. You learn how to manifest as a creditor, and I guarantee you'll never live in a slum, and you'll be the one turning those slums into havens, letting the government know that they aren't quite needed so much as a commercial system with good people running that. When you learn how to run those commercial centers without being a banker, but rather a neighbor owing no man anything, that's where you come to your equal consideration, equal benefit. None of these contracts are valid unless it has that. Now, how many of you people believe that you can be a resident the day you're born? How many of you people believe you can be a United States citizen despite the fact that there is no record other than your say-so? When you learn these things and know what they mean and how to work them, you'll understand how these people all of a sudden start understanding. You'll come to learn how to communicate with the right people instead of arguing with the wrong ones. So let's get on back to the thing here on discharge in bankruptcy. It says bankruptcy basics attempts to answer some basic questions about the discharge available to individual debtors under all 4 chapters. Again, I just showed you chapter 15 of Title 11, which is bankruptcy. So chapter 15 is another bankruptcy chapter, and it's for ancillary or cross-border cases. The Lord preserves thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. For he knew you before he formed you in the belly. And before you were cast from the womb, he sanctified you and he ordained you a prophet unto the nations. Again, another aspect of being a creditor unto the nation. So long as you bring the word sanctified and ordained of God, then they can't sanction that such thing through any of their ordinances. It is not a superior ordinance. There is no power but that which is ordained of God. What is discharge in bankruptcy? Bankruptcy discharge releases the debtor from personal liability for certain specified types of debts. So when we use the Chapter 15, it's a cross-border ancillary case. And if there's truly equal consideration and equal benefit in the United States being bankrupt and not being able to acquire assets, they can only operate on a credit system. Pure and simple. Then why do I need to operate on a monetary system of fiat paperwork? You don't. In other words, the debtor is no longer legally required to pay any debts that are discharged. The discharge is a permanent order prohibiting the creditors of the debtor from taking any form of collection action on discharged debts. So I got to ask you, how would you go about proving that you're a creditor? Do you know 5-speed?
I'm sorry, somebody else was talking to me here. What was that?
How do you prove you're a creditor?
By your word.
That's a nice one.
I mean, I try to simplify things, man. That's what helps me stay centered and balanced. You know what I mean? It's always, I always try to take it around, right back around the center as easy as it could be.
Right. So I want to ask again, what's the debt score? Anybody know your debt score? Anybody down there in chat, anybody can tell me your debt score? Simple questions, folks. And if you think I'm the loony one, think about it. What is a credit score if you're not the creditor? Again, I remind you, there's an extension of credit. Where does this credit come from? Again, I remind you, that United States citizen can't be considered a debtor unless on the other side of the ledger, he's a creditor. And that United States citizen don't exist unless there's an American citizen auxiliary to it. Do you get it? Equal consideration, equal benefit means that on one side of the ledger, I'm a creditor while he's a debtor. On the other side of the ledger, I'm a debtor while he's the creditor, because there's equal consideration. I'm going to give you this, you give me that. It's an exchange of credit and debt. In that, if one party is not satisfied and has come up with something that is clearly not equal as discussed or planned, and there was a meeting of the minds, then he has a right to come back and intervene with a third party by showing them that private contract. He lied. What's one of the most vile sins according to the commandments? Thou shalt not bear false witness on your brother. owe no man anything but to love one another. For to love one another is to fulfill the law. And if you lie and pass false judgment, guess what? You're the one that's going to get it if you lie about me. If you're found to be guilty of that fraud by not doing the thing that you're already obligated to and discharging your duty, see, there's another venue where they discharge things, discharge a duty, discharge an obligation. We're going to go over those. So when you start lying about each other, and this is what I hate, people are so willing to allow those small lies. That's placing a debt against somebody. It's like I see on panels where somebody comes up and says, hey, I heard somebody say that you're such and such. Did you really do such and such thing? On a public forum. That's an attempt to try to defame somebody. Matthew 18, verse 15 says if you have aught with your brother, you're supposed to go to them in private. So why do I see all these people coming up on these panels and discussing this shit, their private affairs, other people's private affairs, as if though you have a fucking right to?
Again, brother, I see it simple. You're either of value or you're a detriment.
Well, people don't understand that term trust, I think.
I'm not sure what it is. I mean, I haven't, I'm not I haven't read the Bible or none of that. I mean, I have obviously some a little bit, and there's certain things that took me to certain verses and whatnot. And there's certain verses that stuck real clear with me. And whether they know all of this whole system or not, it's already in your heart. It's not real complicated. Everybody just makes it so complicated.
Yeah, and that's why I say, folks, I'm an open book. I've told you a lot about a lot of different things in my life, and I'm not quite as open on here, but I've told you a lot of the deeper things about my life, my son and my daughter, and shovel and stabbing people, and I'm not proud of those things, but those are part of my life, and I have to be able to use them as an educational experience, so that when I look back on them and know that I don't want to do those kinds of things again, I find better solutions today. And it's when we go around accusing people of certain things in these public forums, it reminds me of the very same thing that documentation does in the minds of all these public authorities that think they have that actual authority. I want to remind you, these people that have that supposed public authority, ask them, are you not a servant of the public? Aren't you supposed to be serving the public? Well, yeah, public service is a public trust. That means the only authority you have in that public trust belongs to either the principal, who's the principal? Us. Again, that name wouldn't exist without us. So the grantee or grantor, whatever you want to think you are in that legal fiction trust, you have to understand every last one of them is already known as a trustee. So again, I ask you, where's the actual trust? Who made that trust? Was it King Charles? Was it the Queen? I mean, by whose authority? Was it the Pope claiming the souls of all men? Blasphemous claim? The unum sanctum? Violating Isaiah 43:1 and 44:5? Fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name. Thou art mine, both body and soul. I mean, it doesn't partake of anything separating there. Thou art mine. It doesn't say your body belongs to the Satan while you live in earth, but your soul remains mine. It doesn't say that. It says thou art mine. Art, creative, even in form of an article. So that name, truly inspired and given, and being a legacy of a family name, going back to the roots, would either be named after the land, a point or place in the land, the Little River, a talent, the smithy, or the claim and originality of one of the 12 tribes. Those are the only venues I see of the spiritual sense that encompasses everything. And it says, thou art mine. Who, again, who has the right to condemn the land if it's his? Who has the right to condemn me if I'm his? Let no tongue rise up against you in judgment. You shall condemn it. So who can condemn the land? Who can condemn me if I'm the one that's supposed to condemn your false judgments? I'd prefer you just shut the fuck up, particularly in the public, or come to me in private. Matthew 18, verse 15. If you have aught with me, you come to me in private. Again, folks, this is the thing I look for in people, is that spiritual sense and that spiritual inherent knowledge. You should already have this written in your heart. You shouldn't be so flamboyant to be mischief and accusatory. Even people asking questions, feigning that it's just a simple question, but within that question's an accusation. Shut the fuck up. Shalt not bear false witness. You're claiming there's a witness out there that you did something terrible, bringing it up in public forum, and now you've got hundreds of people watching, and now, oh, that's what this metaverse is. It's a fictional world, but everybody puts so much truth into it. People would put more credit into this than their own lives. This is that people sitting on a couch, munching on that processed foods, drinking that poisonous water, watching somebody else's dramatic life or comedic life or mysterious life or murderous life, and not paying attention to the first iota, other than they wish their life was better, because otherwise they wouldn't be sitting on that fucking couch. But wait a minute, here I hear that siren and I see those lights, so I'm going to pop my head out and see what's going on. A couple blocks down the street, they're arresting someone. Instead of doing anything about it, go right back. It's just like George Floyd, just a little bit different distance and a little bit different incident. So the next night they're doing the same thing. Sitting there, they went right back to it after they saw them lights and sirens. But the same thing happens, and they see the lights and sirens and look out and block down the other end of the street. They're arresting somebody else. The next night, they look out and it's across the street over here. The next night, it's their neighbor. When do you think they're coming after you? Variances for categorical pretreatment standards that are fundamentally different in nature and evidenced in the record by enumeration at birth that claimed I was both a United States citizen and a resident, when neither of those could possibly be true. I require the record be corrected, and merely as just a notification that I accept and adopt the nationality for its intended usufruct purposes in exchange of the usufruct of the very name that you've been holding against the very one that it comes from. And in that record exists income or insurance credits that were paid into the system by me, and unearned income credits for things that I was doing, presumed to be the performance of functions of public office, of which I used a card to obtain all those money, property, labor, and services, including the job, through an application where I gave that Social Security number, supposedly as an officer, again, performing the functions of public office in my trade or business as a fucking burger flipper, of which I was paid minimum wage in this experiment. Evidence as a statistical record to determine how smart I am. Well, I'm not so smart anymore. I've gotten over the pain. See, I'm much more studied. And when you do the same thing, you'll find your vocabulary will automatically change as well. A man's intellect is limited and biased by his vocabulary. So pay attention as we continue on with this discharge stuff. Although a debtor is not personally liable for discharged debts, a valid lien, example, a charge upon specific property to secure payment of debt that has not been avoided, made unenforceable in the bankruptcy case, will remain after the bankruptcy case. Therefore, a secured creditor may enforce the lien to recover the property secured by the lien. The secured creditor may enforce the lien to recover the property secured by the lien. Did you know that's exactly the same like wording of the motor vehicle operator's lease agreement? That's secured property. And who has title? The secured party, of course. And what shows that you're the trustee? The trustee document, note certificate of title. That's a secondary document, whereas the title is the principal document. You get it? So, we already discussed the Chapter 15 as the ancillary and other cross-border cases, showing the distinct difference between that and the Chapter 7, 11, 12, or 13 for the individual debtors. And then here, the Chapter 15, we're going to explain that the United States is the individual, and it's identified by a name and number, and that's the name and number identifies the record. The record belongs to the state and the United States, not me. How do we know that? Because they're the holder of the record, right? They have all the accounting. Purpose and scope of the application: general provisions, general provisions, general provisions. This is where you get to lay down your specific conditions. And that is merely just a correction of the records. The United States citizen was already categorically, pre-treatment standard, considered as auxiliary to the American that was born. Access of foreign representatives and creditors to the court. Amicus curiae, friend of the court. Equal station in life. I'm a friend. I have no war documents with you. In fact, that United States citizenship was a national conference. It was a gift. It's evidence that we're friends. Recognition of a foreign proceeding. Foreign proceeding because we're friends. We're not of the same, but we are friends. You gave me a gift because my mom gifted you something. She gifted you the use of a name. Recognition of foreign proceeding and relief. Relief. Wherein you get to bring your remedy to provide the cure of making all parties whole. Remember the 50 U.S.C. 4305b2, full acquittance and discharge in the interest of the United States on the account of the United States and for the person making the same, so that no person shall be held liable in any court. I hereby direct this full acquittance and discharge, having full power to do so. Cooperation with foreign courts and foreign representatives. I don't see why you wouldn't cooperate with me. Again, first in time, first in line. I was born a prophet unto this nation, and I assure you, a strong nation is an intelligent nation. Again, I remind you, a man's intellect is limited and biased by his vocabulary. Learn them. Learn the different venues and what they mean. In these titles, you can tell very simply, with very definitive statements, that there is an intent of cooperation with foreign courts and foreign representatives for recognition of foreign proceeding and relief as with access of foreign representatives and creditors to the court. under their own general provisions so that we can come in and make specifics. The purpose of this chapter is to incorporate the model law on cross-border insolvency so as to provide effective mechanism for dealing with cases of cross-border insolvency with objectives of cooperation between the courts of the United States trustees, examiners, debtors, and debtors in possession. That's expression of a trust. The error is that the benefactor, known as the American, has been mistaken as a trustee, the United States citizen. I need to declarify what has been declared. I'm sorry, I didn't know, but now that I do and have all kinds of evidence in, on, and for your record, in your grammar, in your plain writing, there is no such thing as a United States citizen itself, except in documentation. And that citizen is a corporate entity and doesn't actually confer any kind of nationality except for usufruct under a name, because there is no birth registration in the United States. Therefore, there could be no one except a prophet unto a nation, and that would be myself. If you're going to declare yourself a nation, then you have to accept that I'm a prophet. What have you made as a profit off of me so far? I want it back. That's that credit. That's that credit that's due me. The insurance credit and the unearned income credit for doing things in the performance of functions of public office, as the record will show. It will evidence that. Again, I'm supposed to have an oath of office in order to have a motor vehicle operator's lease agreement, which consists of certificate of title. You have to register it. You have to insure it. And you have to have a driver's license in order to operate it in commerce, which is the performance of the functions of public office for profit through the federal income tax. So it's cooperation with the objectives of cooperation between the courts and other competent authorities of foreign countries involved in cross-border insolvency cases, greater legal certainty for trade and investment. This is the integrity of the record. Like I said, the record must reflect accurately. If the record has anything that's in error, it defiles. Understand the words I'm using. It defiles the record. It's not integral. It's out of order. It shouldn't be there. That's the correction of the record. That's all my intent is. Fair and efficient administration of cross-border insolvencies that protects the interests of all creditors. Again, there's one account, the United States, and everything else is a sub-account. In the interest of the United States, on the account of the United States, for presentation to the United States Treasury, fiscal agent of the United States, for redemption or in exchange for securities of a new issue in accordance with the written instructions submitted by, and then blank. And then you hand that document, the written instructions, with that on the top left-hand corner and a $1 stamp with your written instructions to the trustee. You're not the trustee. The trust is expressed. Know who the trustee is. Know what your part in that in giving a directive for full acquittance and discharge. So the next one is federal student aid. Now, under federal student aid, I want everybody to understand, when you go to get a student loan, you're not of the capacity. You're still a student. They know you can't be an officer. You're still a young man, young woman, whatever. And at a student aid thing, they're the officer. And so when you fill out that student loan application, you hand it over to them, and they're going to go check and see if you're qualified. In that, they say, okay, you've been qualified, but you don't ever sign it. They do. And if you do, and you don't sign it in the proper capacity, guess what? Somebody else in their financial department signs it qualified and gets those credits. That's what we're talking about, folks. So any document you get, make sure you understand what's being offered before you by a buyer as you're the seller. Make sure you know what you're selling. Loan discharge. Loan discharge is the removal of a borrower's obligation to repay some or all of a loan under certain circumstances, including a school's closure. So, to get a document from a hospital that is closed, generally they would either send that on to the county registrar or the state itself. And generally it's going to be the state. Secretary of State, Bureau of Vital Statistics would hold something like that, I imagine, if a hospital closes down. Or if they rebuild, then it would just be moved to the new hospital site, of course. A school's false certification of a borrower's eligibility to receive a loan. A school's false certification of a borrower's eligibility to receive a loan. So if you don't tell them the proper information, you give them false information, that document is false. And therefore the certification is false because they're operating on false information that you gave them. Okay, what's the false information, Russ? Do you know?
I'm sorry, buddy. I have people talking right here. I wasn't paying attention. They were talking to me.
If a school's false certification of a borrower's eligibility to receive a loan is dependent upon the student's information that he gave, and that information is false, does it make a difference how much that the guy that certifies that information believes it to be true or not? If it's false, it's false.
Well, no, it never should have been to begin with.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
They wasn't competent to enter into such.
And what information were they not competent to enter in?
Data, the name and the address and all of that.
Right.
And the U.S. citizen,
the legal name and address that proves through the zip code that there's a United States citizen operating by giving an agent name on the top line and then a security identification with a number and a street name that is securitized, and it's known as a street name security. The municipality created it, and they gave credit to the Postal Service for it, and then the Postal Service, with an interlocal agreement, gave them credit in exchange through the Real Estate Investment Trust with a bonding number. And that United States citizen, like I said, through that zip code, expresses that trust. 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. What's 3 times 3, folks? If you have a graph that goes 1, 2, 3, and the last line goes 1, 2, 3, what is 3 times 3? That's 9. You have the expression of a perfect legal trust. That's the national address format. Learn how to express the trust otherwise. Brother Keith No last name. Full colon stop. Brother Keith. Full colon stop. In ecclesia. Full colon stop. That's the first line. Second line, care of Joyce. Full colon stop. Third line, 123 ABC Street, apartment whatever. Fourth line, Waterloo, comma, Iowa, square brackets, 50701, square bracket. Fifth line, United States of America. That's outside of their national address format. And it describes a different trust. It expresses a different trust. It expresses the ecclesiastical trust. The benefactor, Keith, Brother Keith, in ecclesia. A trustee, care of Joyce. And then city, or the street address, city, state, zip, and United States of America. 3 more parties. And it's the city or the municipality and that bonding number at that local address that's the beneficiary. The city, state, zip is the expression of the trustee. It's all a public service. They're all actually trustees. To the principal, United States of America, the people. I hope you guys understand that, and you can rewind that and play it until you get it. Multiple ways to express different trusts. Different grammar. Let no tongue prosper. No tongue shall prosper against you. Let no tongue rise up in judgment. False judgment? Yeah, no good. So let's get back to the discharge. Because the next one is a school's failure to pay a required loan refund. Refund. That's an interesting one that I might get into someday, but for now we're not going to worry about it. Because I want to talk about the next one. It says borrower's defense to repayment. Notice how it says refund. I want you to understand the grammar. It says repayment. So a payment was already processed. Okay? Get that TDA account open so they have a place to put it when you instruct them. I'm going to use that as a pass-through because I've got an enterprise payment system account online with the Postal Service. The Bank. The Post. The Royal Navy. I just don't need a Mariner's license. I just have the Mariner account. It operates as in a global postal trust as a benefactor, correcting even the UPU's facts. See, when it comes to that American citizen, again, there's the expression of a 3 again, the Trinity. There's not just a U.S. citizenship, there's an American citizenship, and then there's a heaven citizenship, because I'm in communication with him. Another grammar. So we have grammar here that says repayment. So something's already been paid. There's already been a payment. So it's the mentality to pay. The mentality of paying. What's it say? Pay it forward. Okay, I'll pay it for the ward. Customer agrees to make third-party payment so long as it's understood that credit is given to the customer's account. Isn't that paying it forward? I mean, it is a ward of the state, right? It's the ward of the state, not me, right? So I'm going to pay it forward. Don't you get it? So let's take a look what they say under student aid. It says apply for a borrower defense. Before you apply, learn how to submit the strongest application possible. Let's click on that. Open that link in a new bar. And it says on August 7th, 2023, a federal court issued an injunction delaying the effective date of the latest regulations governing borrower defense and closed school loan discharges until at least November 2023. The department will not adjudicate any borrower defense applications under the latest rule unless and until the effective date is reinstated. So that's under the latest rule, folks. So I'm going to bust this right the fuck away in the nuts. What do y'all know about Regulation Z, truth in lending, and all that? Okay, because I don't care if it's a student loan, a bank loan, or whatever. You don't have the qualifications to be taking out a loan as an officer of the ultimate corporation of the United States in the name of the United States citizen, because you're not that citizen. What you do have the right to do is extend credit. You do have the right to extend credit because you have the use of a card, a social security card, in that usufruct system, showing you the very two pillars that the man was talking about. That's your authority to operate in the civil venue under Admiralty Maritime, and you get to shop your form. But guess what? As above, so below. So in that form, you get to bring that word. That's what we're talking about, folks. So you don't even have to apply for a borrower defense. They're talking about repayment. That's telling you, well, you're obviously due a refund or something then. It's like the equity in a home, like I've been talking to a few people about that have been evicted. Jack's looking at the same situation. I don't understand why people don't do this, but you need to make a small claim or a full valid claim against the equity in the home, so that when these cocksuckers sell that home, guess what? You've already got your claim on the equity. What's the equity? Well, they're only owed $50,000 on a $285,000 home. You've already paid however much that paid it down to $235,000. So they're only owed $50,000. They still have a market value of at least $235,000 on the house, probably. So they might, do a reassessment, spend a couple $1,000s to get a proper real estate assessment done on it, and make sure that it's not, jumped up in value somehow. And if so, they're going to turn around and maybe give it a discount. So even if it does go up a little bit, say $255,000 or $295,000 now it's assessed. So it went up $10,000. They might give it, say, $250,000 just to get rid of it, because they're only owed $50,000. They can't claim the other $200,000. But the guy that owns the equity in it, he has equitable remedy to not abandon the equity. All he's got to do is recognize there's equity in everything, because the credit is what you put into it. These rental agreements, if you're spending $650 a month maintaining the unit, and they're charging you $650 a month for rent, you get to equalize that by charging them back, just like it showed last night. That you get to charge them. It's an equal consideration. If they're going to charge you, you get to charge them. What are you going to charge them for? Your personal service as a cleaning maid, as a plumber, or whatever. Give them receipts for the repairs that you did. All you got to do is learn what that contract is all about and correct the conditions that you're not, in fact, a resident and not subject to the lease as it is, but you can amend it so it can be honored. You wouldn't want to think that somebody is trying to dishonor an American by offering them a United States citizen document that wouldn't allow them to place themselves as the very principal to that very citizen. It's just idiocy. So let's look at the next one. Because the next one talks, this is York University. Osgood Hall Law School of York University. Articles and book chapters. It's an article. It's protected. Okay? And they're giving you notice. Source publication, Chicago Kent Law Review. Kent School of Law, Chicago. In connection with non-cash payment through the banking system, finality of payment. This is what I was talking about earlier with that judgment. You shall rise up and condemn those judgments. See, they have to have a final judgment. They don't ever get a final judgment. Everything still remains a presumption. Even the case law. Even the case law is a presumption. Has acquired, excuse me, has acquired diverse meaning. Let me blow this up. There we go. I think everybody can see that a little better. In connection with the non-cash payment through the banking system, finality of payment has acquired diverse meanings. See, even their grammar acquires things. In one sense, it has come to denote the irreversibility of the payment process. See, it's supposed to circulate, folks. So when you make a payment, there's supposed to be a repayment. It's supposed to come back to you. Particularly in connection with insolvency. Otherwise, it has also been taken to signify the loss of the right to recover a mistaken payment. And again, these are just the first few statements in a lot of these documents, folks. If you go through and read them, you'll find out how they correlate and what's happening. Everything's been a mistaken payment. Everything. You're not meant to make that payment. It's meant to be an extension of credit to obtain money, property, labor, or services on credit. If they're doing things in good faith and they have the full power of redemption, then they should do it. They don't. You have to bring the redemption to the table, for the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine. Ye are strangers and sojourners with me. And in all the lands of your possession, ye shall grant a redemption to the land. So study to shew thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So that no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. And this is a faithful saying, and these things I will. He wrote his will upon your heart with the index finger of his right hand before he formed you in the belly, because he knew you, an image and likeness of himself. I will that these, and these things, I'll just start over. This is a faithful saying, and these things I will that thou affirm constantly, that they which have believed in God might be careful to maintain good works. These things are good and profitable unto men. Finally, it has been used to mark the accountability to the payee / beneficiary. Ask them, am I the payee? Am I supposed to pay this? Am I the payee? Beneficiary. They're going to say, yeah. Okay. So there is an accountability to the beneficiary, and the beneficiary is deemed to be the true owner. By a bank instructed to pay to that payee beneficiary. Customer agrees to make third-party payment for all money, property, labor, or services, so long as it's understood that the credit is given to the customer's account. I think it's very simple. This article deals with the latter, third listed meaning. Third listed meaning. Insolvency, mistaken payment, payee beneficiary. And just like the Navy War, the Postal War, and the Banking War, so now we have a bank who owes an obligation to the beneficiary of a posting of an account of a naval matter concerning the nativity. Does that make sense, Russ?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to drop this link. I see Danielle is down there again. Nubs is still down there. Come on back up. JG, feel welcome to come up. Anybody welcome to come up. Link is down there to join the panel. And that's what we're talking about, is discharging everything, folks. There's, like I said earlier in the beginning, there are several different grammars being used, and it's a matter of discharging the things that are being charged in each venue. Letting things circulate. And that's truly what you're doing when you give them credit, is you're allowing their circulation to occur. Because when you get your credit back, that particular circulation stops until you extend credit again. Now, I'm going to use the metaphor or analogy of a battery charger. I've got a battery charger. My neighbor's sitting out there in the parking lot. His car won't start. He asked me to charge his car up. Okay. So I charge his car up, and now all of a sudden his car is circulating. He's got current flowing now. It's current. That's currency. It's got to keep flowing. If it doesn't flow, there's no currency. It's a law of the sea. As long as you've got currency, you can float your boat. Greetings, Danielle. How you doing tonight?
Shalom. I'm doing all right. How about you guys?
Good to see you, bro. Good to see you, brother.
Likewise. Just getting home from work.
I don't know what you mean there, brother. It shouldn't have been leaked, deleted. I've got no mods, and I didn't do any deleting myself. You're talking about non-feasance, as in etymology. Let me pull it up.
I mean, I'm going to intervene real quick and comment on this comment. If you're going to talk shit, at least be man enough and come up on the panel and say it on record.
No, he's already just Somebody might have just clicked the wrong button somewhere. I'm not saying it wasn't me. I said to go
I'm
past.
talking about
It might have
Brett.
been him. Yeah, I know. Oh. No, he better. It's probably the sock account. I don't really care. I don't care for Tarek myself. So, he's one of the people I was talking about earlier, making accusatory questions. You want to run your mouth like that. That's just bullshit. You want to talk to somebody about an issue you might have with them, then you're supposed to do it in private.
You know what gets me, brother?
Matthew 18, verse 15 through 20. Read up and learn it, folks. Go ahead, brother.
I was just about to say, Scripture states that if you're going to talk about someone, do it to their face, let it be bad or good.
How can we learn anything with all that clutter in our minds and hate towards people or whatever the case may be? It just seems worthless.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm getting to. People want to talk to me about that shovel, but they don't know the whole story. So I'm open about the story, but if you want to get to know me, I'm telling you don't want to be my friend, because it's things like that when we get in discussions about the need for hitting somebody upside the head with a shovel. It gets into private details, and if you can't handle those private details and how I act and operate as a person, you're going to be one of those guys that I'm going to be riding along down the road someday, and you're going to think that your mouth is going to be able to back it up with a shovel that's in my hand. It ain't going to work like that if you're going to be talking shit about people.
Right. What I enjoy right now is no drama, no nothing. We're over here discussing things. People respect each other. I think it's great.
Yep. So anyway, let's get on to the next one, because we're just about done here. I've got 1, 2, 3. Yep, 3. And Nubs, if you're still here, come on up, because the last one I got to talk about is what we were talking about at the very beginning. And here we've got LII-WEX. Now, LII-WEX, we're going to see a couple of them here, and I'm going to show you some distinct differences. And again, it goes to that grammar thing. So we're talking about different venues, different forums, just like we were in this last one, where it spoke about this article deals with the latter of the third listed. So we're talking about 3 things, and so we're going to make a distinction between the 2 that LII-WEX have. First one is discharge, and it says of debts. Discharge of debts refers to the process in bankruptcy court when a debtor is no longer liable for their debts and the lender is no longer allowed to make attempts to collect the debt. Now they're calling them a lender. Deuteronomy 15, I believe it's verse 6, talks about we are supposed to be lenders unto the nations. And what are we supposed to lend unto the nation? The profit. So any profit the nation gets is supposed to be the type of profit we give them. And our people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So the true profit is the knowledge that enhances the commercial system for the benefit of all, because we are all benefactors. Is no longer allowed to make attempts to collect debt. The court will issue a decision to discharge debts. Courts can issue a discharge ruling when the debtor meets the discharge requirements under Chapter 7 or 11 of federal bankruptcy law. So what happened to 12 and 13? What happened to, see, now it's just 7-11. And again, this goes to the grammar. They're talking about different things here. They're talking about particular types of bankruptcy, 12 or 13. And again, they don't mention a specific bankruptcy known as Chapter 15, ancillary and other cross-border cases. So you have to, again, learn how to read between the lines by reading what's not there and things that you're not directed to, by expanding your own research above and beyond what they actually give you. So let's go back. Or the ruling is based on a debt canceling. Now, a lot of your credit lines and credit cards and accounts, bank accounts, financial accounts, should have something in there about a cancellation of debt. If it doesn't have a cancellation of debt clause in there, you should do your research so you can put one in there yourself. If you're in the capacity of taking out a loan or being a lender instead of extending credit, there's a distinct difference. Again, we're talking about the grammar here. This would be discharge of debt for somebody that is actually operating an actual business, actually organized under 12 U.S.C. 614, and is operating under the laws of the United States as a licensed and authorized entity as a contracting agent or an officer of the United States or state or municipality that has thereby a nexus of an oath. Gotta have that for this kind of a discharge. Otherwise, you come in ancillary as the benefactor, settlor, principal. A canceling of debt happens when the lender agrees that the rest of the debt is forgiven. So if they're going to presume that they're the lender when they're not, and you can prove they're not, they have to agree that the rest of the debt is forgiven. Owe no man anything but to love one another, for that is to fulfill the law. If they're going to claim that somebody owes them, goodness gracious, that's saying that you don't love, and therefore you're the one that's not fulfilling the law. Right? Right. Okay, let no tongue prosper. For example, if the debtor and the lender have signed a debt cancellation agreement. So again, for example, if the debtor and the lender have signed a debt cancellation, see how they've moved away from the credit thing? This isn't a credit transaction. They're saying debt transaction, and you have a lender, and on any documentation, he would take the capacity of, well, that goes to my credit. I'm the one that lended him. Okay? Have signed the debt cancellation agreement. That's that signature. Got to make sure you qualify those things, which provides for cancellation of the remaining loan balance in certain conditions, like death or property being stolen. When they sign the original lending contract and the cancellation agreement is found by the court as valid, the lender would have to forgive the debt. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, as we work together faithfully and being careful to maintain good works, so that they are good and profitable unto men, so that we're not leading each other into temptation. We're delivering each other from evil by forgiving each other, because we know we're not perfect, even in the image and likeness. All glory goes to him. In this case, the debtor can ask for the court to issue a discharge ruling to release the future debts. To release the future debts. Now, wait a minute. I thought this was a discharge of debts past due and owing. Where do the future debts come in? What is the preposition and presupposition of future debts? Where does that come in? Does that come in that you intend to violate the law? Owe no man anything but to love one another? Is that a statement showing that you intend to violate the law because you believe there will be a future debt? Businesses often have a DCA and a retail installment contract. Big problem there, folks. A lot of folks are caught up in them retail installment contracts. Those are your loans for the house, the car, for the business, for everything. Where your insurance is an installment contract. You pay a monthly installment. What's that? Install. The mentality of living in a stall, like in a livery stable, and they only let you out when there's a delivery because you're the common carrier. You're the one that carries all those data elements, and they need you to do all that labor. But they aren't going to pay you except for some peanuts or some hay, just enough to keep you alive. Some states require the DCA being submitted to certain government agencies to be approved. See this Texas Motor Vehicle Sales Finance DCA submission requirement for further details. The law is uniform throughout all jurisdictions, so the state is the one that has one of the best vehicle sales finance DCA submission requirements. So you can just copy paste that and change all the information and have an excellent DCA, whether you live in Minnesota or Iowa. And that's one of the things that I got to do tomorrow, folks. Just a little note here as it relates to the Minnesota DBA. I'm not going to do mine in Minnesota. I'm going to do mine in Iowa. In Iowa, it's not a DBA. In Iowa, it's called a fictitious name registration. In Minnesota, I think it costs like $25 or so. In Iowa, it costs $5. But it's the same thing. It places a legal entity, the legal name known as Keith Little, a United States citizen identified through resident capacity in the state, and it's going to put a classification on there of good standing, in good standing. That's all that does.
They're stripping the people's minds of their life source energy.
Yes, and it's like I said earlier, it's not that you're the shadow. Greetings, Rebel Studio. I'm going to put you on mute real quick because you got some background noise there.
Oh, hello. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. So it looks like he's having a.
Fix it.
You're connected, but we're getting static and background noise. So I'm just going to mute you. Unless you've got something to say, go ahead and say it real quick.
Our enemy, I guess, is attacking my side. I've disconnected my.
Okay, we'll just have you sit there and I'm going to mute you while you listen. There we go. Okay, so we've got the discharge of debts as it goes to the public office. You got to have that resident determination, and that's that thing that I'm telling you. It's impossible. You can't be a resident when you're born. You can't be deemed necessary by the board, and that board being the Secretary of Commerce for commercial purposes, and supported again by the Secretary of Treasury, again for commercial purposes. You can't be deemed necessary by the board for commercial purposes as an officer or an agent when you're born. That's a predetermination, classification, standardization through that form that mom fills out. And it's not accepted as a form of credit. It's a device used to obtain money on credit, money, property, labor, or services on credit by the state in a usufruct, and nobody's observing that equal consideration of usufruct on the other side. They're using the name and gave it a number, and you get to use that in return for the commercial purposes. Again, understand that for those commercial purposes, with that authorized representative giving an unambiguous signature on the instrument, is therefore not liable for the person named in the instrument. So you have to make that qualified signature by principal or by trustee, whatever capacity you're going to qualify that signature for. You have to make that qualification so that it's understood. So the next one, it says discharge. Again, a discharge is the extinguishment or release of a legal obligation or duty. So now it doesn't have anything to do with the contract and financing as far as a debt is concerned, but to do with an obligation or duty. Okay? So now we have a bankruptcy, a mistake, and that beneficiary. And here we have an legal obligation. So you don't have so much a legal obligation in the bankruptcy, except unless it's a cancellation of debt. Same with the mistake, cancellation of debt. But the obligation or duty, folks, I don't care if you're a public servant doing anything but lending or crediting. It still goes to the fact that if you're performing the functions of a public office in public service, that is a public trust. And your obligation or duty is to the people and not to the goddamned paperwork. Somebody tells you there's something wrong with the paperwork, you damn well better start investigating it, because that's what it's for. It's for tracking down truth. And if there are errors in it and it's an investment, then it's not a wise investment. I don't know what these people think, but if they really believe they're competent, they would understand these simplicities. For example, a discharge of the payment of a debt means you are no longer legally obligated to pay the debt. See bankruptcy. In context of employment law, an employee discharge is when an employee is terminated from employment involuntarily. So now we have the voluntary termination or cancellation to pay a debt, and we have a involuntary. But the thing is, there's still a debt. You had a contract that you were indebted to give them labor. Now they've involuntarily terminated it on their behalf alone. They don't give a fuck what you say. And you can do the same thing. You can quit voluntarily. On their side, it's involuntarily. It's quid pro quo, and it's debtor creditor. Both sides on two ledgers. And the last one I was hoping Nubs would come up for. And we got Rebel Studio 2, you're back. We got a better signal?
Did it work?
Nope, still buffering, brother. Still buffering, brother. And we have potential victim here. Greetings tonight, brother.
Greetings.
Greetings.
You been following along?
Yeah, I have been following along, on and off, sort of, slightly. Yeah, great show, by the way. Thank you all. Thank you.
Right, appreciate it. All glory goes to him, of course. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. All I can do is pass it on and do my best to discern it and express it. I cannot comprehend it for you. So all I can do is hope that if you have questions, you'll ask them and I can be able to answer them. So in the meantime, we got the last one. Like I said, I was hoping Nubs would come up and show up for this, but this is setting up an account in Treasury Direct. Now remember, folks, we're supposed to be letting the Treasury do the discharge, and we're supposed to give them a directive to do so. Okay? This is the premise of everything I'm presenting. We're not supposed to be dealing with these low-level people the way we are. We're supposed to be able to accept these offers and put the right declarations on them so that they are patent, observable on the face of the instrument, and very clear and succinct. And they should already know these very simple terms and just do what they're supposed to. It's already in their policies and everything, and it's just a matter of learning those different tongues. If you can't rise up against a tongue that's placing judgment against you because you don't know that tongue, then I suggest you learn those tongues. And like the man said in the earlier video at the beginning, it's about the different grammars. They have multiple venues of grammar. as I'm showing you. So it says setting up an account in Treasury Direct. Very simple. To set up an account in Treasury Direct, follow these steps. Open your internet browser. Let me blow this up a little bit. It says open your internet browser and type www.treasurydirect.gov in the address window. On the Treasury Direct homepage, in the upper right corner, select Open an Account. On the Treasury Direct Open an Account page, select Treasury Direct. Read the 3 steps on the Open an Account intro page. To open an individual Treasury Direct account, make sure you have these things. And remember, the individual's name and number identify the record. So what we're going to do is we're going to transfer that title to the United States from the state. That individual is going to have the name and social security number, a United States address of record, a checking or savings account, an email address, a web browser that supports 128-bit encryption. This is an electronic accounting being set up. In case you don't understand that, you're going to give them a United States address of record. And notice, this is why I'm telling everybody that address is what it's all about. That is an address of record, and it's the judicial court of record. There is no court of record in the administrative courts. Those are administrative records for district courts. The post office is the court of record. Again, it is a military posting. In a banking operation. The courthouse is a court, a bank, and a post office. Every last one of them military. And again, what we're doing here is just making sure the documents are set up, a checking or savings account. And you don't have to have necessarily a checking or savings account. You can have a trust account. It's a bank account of some sort. Even an enterprise payment systems account would work, I'm sure. I'm going to be finding out tomorrow, hopefully. An email address, a web browser that supports 128-bit encryption. Once you've gathered what you need, click the Apply Now button at the bottom of the screen. Choose Individual as the type of account you would like to open, and then click Submit. And it's going to say Corporation, Partnership, Limited Liability Company, Professional Limited Liability, Sole Proprietorship, Estate or Trust. Deceased estate, living estate, trust. They're going to give you examples. Okay? And then we have, for the instruments outside of that bank, say a purchase order or something like that, like we expressed yesterday, for presentation to the United States Treasury, fiscal agent of the United States for redemption or in exchange for securities of a new issue in accordance with the written instructions submitted by, and then that written letter of instruction is going to be a letter of credit. Customer agrees to extend credits to make the payment so long as credit is returned to the customer's account. Simple. Does that make sense to everybody? from start to finish, it is about what you post. You've been posting things in error. You were indoctrinated into that because mom and dad have been doing the same thing generation after generation. And all you have to do is fix the record. Say, hey, now that I know better, I have to make a greater legal determination. What was that? Where was that? Chapter 15. Greater legal certainty. I have to make a greater legal certainty because I found errors. And I am certain you will know what I'm talking about when I point them out. And that's all it takes. Fixing the record. Autumn Coleman says, wow, she finally gets it. Everything posted is it has a name of someone known as a person that is accountable. This is a statistical data element. That's what they're counting, and they have to keep track of that. The only way they can keep track of that is through you. The only reason they need to keep track of that is for the shipping, the supply and demand chain that they entitle you to use. That's as simple as it gets. So with that, we're on our way out the door. That's the end of the stream tonight. You guys got anything unless you guys got questions or anything, I'm always open to questions, and I really wish you guys would ask more, but maybe I do too good of a job explaining, even though people say they're confused. I don't know. That's why I ask. I would hope people would ask questions.
Go ahead, Danielle. Do you have any?
In defense of that, you do drop a lot of information, and it is a lot to assimilate. And my process is going back and rewatching to take notes.
Okay. I appreciate that too, because I really wish people would. I've said it many times, and I have no problem repeating it again. Do not believe me. Do not believe the neighbor. Do not believe the government. And for crying out loud, do not believe your mother. Do your research so you know. And if that means going back and having to re-listen to videos, not just mine, but any video, over and over again until it does click, please do so.
I do honestly believe the biggest click that needs to happen is the spiritual click.
Absolutely. I agree.
I think that's the most important part of all of it. Without that, nothing else makes sense.
Well, let me read Isaiah 54, verse 17 again as we look at this scripture one last time before we go out the door here. It says, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. He is our only judge. And when it talks about in Romans 13, there is no power but that which is ordained of God. That's why you have to bring the word of God into these courts. That it is a ecclesiastical court. Okay? Everything is scriptural. They get everything from the scripture. There is nothing without the scripture and God. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. And again, just so we don't get confused about that term God, the way I use it, it is the spiritual essence that exists in all of us and everything else in life, even the different elements and the minerals that the one man was talking about in that first TikTok video. Everything has some kind of spiritual element because they all coalesce in this physical realm that we observe as useful to us in one way or another. So, and again, it's a usufruct.
Well, just as it says in the United States Code for those U.S. citizens and residents, you owes a debt and an obligation to the United States when actually you, the son or daughter of the Most High, owe a greater obligation to that Creator, first and
Yeah.
foremost.
Yeah, and that's to make sure that anybody presenting a debt, you're a redeemer. Leviticus 25, verse 25. After you redeem the land, you have the ability, if you can redeem the land, then you can redeem what comes of the land. That includes your brother, your neighbor. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Owe no man anything but to love them. And I know if I had somebody that came along and could redeem me, I wish he would redeem me. And guess what? He has. So now I get to redeem others. I fear not, for he has called me by thy name. I am his. I don't give a fuck what you call me. And in fact, if you want to call me snitch, I'm going to admit to it. Yeah, I am a snitch. And I'm going to tell him all about it.
You know, when I come to to comprehend equity, right? You know, 45 years old, you look at equity in a different way of, education levels, bank accounts, and how much time you put in what you think you're worth and all of this shit. When equity, what I find to be so beautiful about it, you cannot squirm left or right, baby.
Yep. And that's what
Straight is the gate and narrow is the way.
And that's what I like seeing about that thing about the future debt. When we looked up that definition,
yeah.
What was it?
Keep muting. We got a little dog yapper here. She likes to yap, but she hears a noise.
What was it? What did we look at? Wasn't that one? Was it the one before? But yeah, anyway, I can't remember which one is discussed, but the future debt. How can there be a future debt? Again, if you know to owe no man anything but to love one another, for to love one another is to fulfill the law, then why would you pose that there's a debt? That's admitting that you're not following the law, that you're violating the law. That's the simple thing about it. That's why if you want to come running around on this panel making an accusation about somebody by asking a question, that's an accusatory question by bringing up something in the public that should be discussed with them in private. I already know you're not a spiritual being. I already know you don't have that concept in you. And that's the first thing you're going to do to me if you try to get up next to me. You do not want to be my motherfucking friend at that time. I'm giving you a caveat right now.
Fire.
So anyway, we're going to go ahead and we're 2.5 hours in. You guys got anything else to say? I know Danielle's feeling pretty good here lately. He's had a recent success, and we're hoping we can keep him moving in that same success. So
good. Congratulations, brother.
Yeah, I just won my first court case yesterday.
Nice.
It was an appeal for the first failure to appear that the lower courts automatically found me guilty, and I immediately appealed after that. That was all settled yesterday, and I won.
Absolutely. Good deal. And with that, I do want to thank everybody for your support. We had a lot of people come in today. Skrull David, Autumn Coleman, Moonbug, Imperium Privatus. Who else we got here? Roz. Yeah. Roz Blackwood. Witness is here. Channel 3, Rebecca, West Coast Shell. We got the homeless AI down here. That's the homeless AI, Danielle. He's a great guy there. Don't let him convince you that he's homeless. He's got the whole world at his hands. We got Lex Animata with us.
Sounds like
Eric was here. Rebel 2 Studio. I'm sorry it didn't work out for you on panel tonight. you get that signal fixed, and we're always glad to have you, brother. So other than that, and of course we had Nubs up here earlier. I want to thank Russ and Danielle. You guys been great. Keep up the support, and of course hit that like, share, and subscribe button. I do always request that you know, if you got some love to share through that PayPal link, feel free to do so. I could always use it at this point yet, but like I said, one of these days. And in the meantime, you know I love you. I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back, and that's say I don't care if you hate me. So may God bless you guys, and have a good night.